Testing. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to call the meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. on March 16th, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll start introductions with Mayor Shaleen.
Hello, yes, my name is Carl Schling, the mayor of Lewiston. Appreciate being here. Thank you all.
Donna Galena, Ward 7.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Linnea Hawkins, Ward 5.
Julia Harper, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Luke Jensen at large.
Phoenix McLaughlin, Ward 1.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Brian Caron, City Administrator.
Susan Longchamps, Ward 2.
Joshua Najin, Ward 1.
David Chittum, Ward 6.
Mike Roy, Ward 4.
Chrissy Noble, Ward 5.
Brett Martell, Ward 7.
Okay, thank you all for being here. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent for his presentation.
So similar to years past, we put together a slideshow just to guide us through process. We'll share a little bit about where we landed in the superintendent's version of the budget, and obviously take any questions that you may have as we work through. So from a process perspective, we start in December. Actually, I would say this year we started even before then. Obviously guided by past community feedback. In each election or referendum, there's a question at the end of, is it too high, just right, too little? And we take those numbers as feedback as part of our process also. And then being very mindful that there's a revaluation in our city this year that's going to come out in April as far as more detail. And we know that our taxpayers will be on the lookout for those. We do encourage everyone to participate in the process. We meet Mondays and Wednesdays. I know that the city's meeting regularly on Tuesdays to discuss budget in these times. The school portion of the budget is a vote on May 12th. So just a little bit of context. We're at about 5,400 students currently. We have 12 facilities, including the schools and sites listed here. When I put together these slides, I asked HR to give me an accurate number, and at the time we had 1,384 total staff. That includes some part-time roles, coaches, things of that nature. We have 1,112 full-time staff. And as a comparison, I believe the city employs around 360 full-time staff.
Member Bowden?
Thank you. Jake, do you have this that you could send to us?
I can share it if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So from a budget version perspective, step by step, the first edition of the budget, if you will, is the superintendent's budget. This is the budget I brought forward to the school committee. The school committee is in the process of doing its work with the budget. And that takes about a month, sometimes a little longer, depending on how things go. And then ultimately the school committee will vote on a budget. Then that will carry forward to the city. And then the city council will review the budget, provide some input. And then it's actually May 5th that comes back to you, hopefully with support, to go out to referendum on the 12th of May. Once we get to that point, if there is a referendum vote that supports the budget, that's what becomes the Lewis Public Schools FY this year be 27 budget. Maintenance of commitment. In the past, we've talked about anchors, we've talked about areas for growth. We're trying to use the right terms this year because there's not not enough money to talk a lot about growth and additions. So maintenance of commitment, we always look to anchor our thinking in school safety, improving our special education structure to improve programming, maintain pathways to graduation, maintain equity, social, emotional, and coping skills development, improve instruction and learning systematically, and also stability and communication. So I took an excerpt from the memo that we shared when we started our budget process. I thought there were enough talking points on here that it'd be worth having. So just some notes, Lewiston taxpayers have voiced for several years that the local tax burden is high and hard to afford. We have had people tell us that they voted one way or another, but that they support the schools and the work we're doing, but it's the overall cost that people are having a hard time with. I mentioned the revaluation process. That's decades past due, which we all know. No one here is to blame for that, but it's a big update, and we're very mindful of that and the implications it will have for our property owners. The notice of those specific tax changes, my understanding, will be in April, and the budget referendum just being a few weeks later. We're aware we need to make sure that we communicate well so people are aware of what they're voting on. As a reminder, the city portion of the budget is not voted on at the referendum. I bring that up because we did hear in years past in trying to gather information from people that they just wanted to vote it all one way or another. And there were some people that didn't quite realize that they were not voting on other portions of the budget. That referendum on May 12th is specifically school budget. The proposed increase on the city side of the budget locally, when they started the process, is 5.9 million. And we came in at 3.9 million in our request. We are recipients of increased state subsidy, but without changes, the budget would have been a $6.5 million increase. We didn't bring that to the school committee. We didn't think that that would be palatable for taxpayers, and also on the school committee to do their best work without trying to surmount something that big of a reduction that would need to be made. Cost drivers that pushed our budget to higher levels without substantive changes to what we offer, the number of staff we have. We also have a diminishing fund balance. Right now, that's at 7.1 million. This budget does propose the use of 3.5. Between cost overruns and transportation, special education, and power in the current year, we have some gaps that we're trying to bridge currently. And there's also impacts from federal decisions, which include not knowing certain things about areas like title funds at this point in time, but also some of its rulemaking or guided language that goes with some of the grants that are already in existence, and that will have impacts as well. So the last 3 years, we've reduced many positions. We've also added some. We've added in the areas of special education, our efforts around climb and bringing kids back to our schools instead of spending quite so much to have them go elsewhere. But in the past, when we've reduced positions, many of them have been vacant, and that's no longer the case. So when we're talking about a reduction in positions, they are large in part fully staffed or have a substitute that's filling that role. We will, of course, continue to review and look for ways to restructure and ensure we're doing everything we can so that we can preserve as many staff as possible with our focus on our students and being good stewards of the resources we are afforded. So just doing a revenue look back, this graphic shows year to year how much money has been raised locally. You can see that this year we're requesting 3.904 at the superintendent level budget. Last year, voters approved 919,000. And then if you look at the 3 years prior to that, they were all in the $3 million range. And if you look at it by percentage, you can see the percent increase to the local ask. So in the FY27 proposed budget, we have 30 positions that we've reduced. We worked closely with the administrative team to try to inform this process. None of it's easy. 23 of these positions are active employees that are engaged with our staff and students on a regular basis. Our budget is currently $130 million, and that's up 11% from last year. From a comparison perspective, Portland, while we're not Portland, their budget is 179 million proposed. You can see the difference in that rate as far as what we secure for resources and requesting. This is an increase of $12.9 million from the 117 last year, and we'll talk about some of the cost drivers of why that is. So we look at this chart, you can see from left to right, FY26 is the year that we're living. FY27 is the budget we're discussing. And you can see the increase to special education of over $5 million. Director Crafts did a good job last week talking about what those cost drivers are, and they include staff costs, because we did grow that program throughout the year. So that's not just new one-year costs, that's detailed actualized cost from adding staff for our client program. We also have main care seed, which is our portion of reimbursement that we are required to pay for students that are tuitioned. For example, if we tuition a student to a special purpose private school and that school applies for reimbursement, we pay roughly a third of that. It varies by what levels of the kids' qualifications, or what they're identified as for what section and supports, but that's a big cost driver for us. The other big increase in special education is tuition costs with students that go elsewhere. We saw some increases this year that were up as much as $115 of an increase per day of attendance. And when we do all of the math on that, plus salaries and collective bargaining agreements, that's up over $5 million. Transportation, we're entering into year one of a new agreement. It has additional costs built into it, but the $2.5 million increase is much to do with what we're currently doing and correcting that for actual usage. It is not inexpensive to keep our kids home, but it is far less expensive than sending them elsewhere. However, a lot of them need specialized transportation. Our utilities, we run on a 5-year cycle, and we had a 5-year agreement that last year, not last year, excuse me. Well, I guess it was last year in December. That agreement came to a close, and through the new process for an RFP, the amount we were able to secure has a sizable increase of $742,000. So that one line increase, cost driver, is strictly power. Workers' compensation, we have to replenish the pool, so to speak. And last year it was a much smaller amount. This year it's an $892,000 increase, and that's up 112%. Health insurance, that's an estimate at 14%. We know that there's going to be a cap at 14%. We should hear in the next 2 weeks what the actual rate for health insurance will be. Anything less than 14%, the school committee will take a look at and see what they might choose to do, or just take it all right back out of the budget. We budgeted 15%. Last year, there were some schools that were not too far from us that their districts got a 15% increase. So that's why we budgeted at 15%. And again, you can see the 1.8 increase for just health insurance. Other than that, we have salaries at 4.142 million. That's a 6.5% increase, and that includes all areas of salary, collective bargaining, and contract staff. So in your binders, you have the articles overall, and if you wanted to look at them by article, you can see how these break down. And in this chart, you can see the percent change, but also the percent increase to the budget, and then the percent of the budget as a whole. And if you look at it from top to bottom, you can see that regular instruction is over 30% of our budget, and close second is special education at almost 30%. The numbers after that drop off pretty quickly. I have a visual to explain this too. Again, this is just the articles overall, and how much of the pie does each respective area cost. Effort to grow support for our kids. Programming is growing in our schools. We have more and more kids staying with us instead of being tuitioned to other school districts or other special purpose schools. Out of district placements are below 100 and I believe still reducing. There's a plan for another 5 kids, I believe. Looking out in the crowd, I see Director Kraft nodding yes. We have Child Development Services, or CDS, that will become our responsibility in full in FY28. And as a refresher, or it might be new to some, we showed this slide we started in 24-25. And what this is explaining is a phased approach. The cost of tuitioning students elsewhere has become a large financial burden. And so in an effort to reduce how much we spend elsewhere, this shows that we started with a part of a wing of a school that happens to be at McMahon. We now use a full wing and a modular at McMahon, and we're out of space. So we're bringing kids back. There is I use the phrase cost deflection, because it's not inexpensive to educate these high need students, but just showing that multi-year phased approach. We could get to a point where we're already at a point where we need additional space. However, when we first built this model and shared it out, it shows a schoolhouse in that year 4 or 5 range, which would be 2028, 29. Probably looking more at an immersive model where those students can stay in the schools that they're at, but maybe find another way to do some programming that would have additional space. To that end, we talk about funding. We continue to look for support to rehabilitate 287 Main Street. We are working with Harriman on a concept plan. They're in the works, and that's being built out. We are looking at a potential pilot with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, doing some hands-on learning and looking for space for those 3 and 4-year-olds. So one idea would be to pull 6th grade students, maybe not district-wide, but out of some schools, to do some programming, and then having 3 and 4-year-olds go into those schools where there's already pre-K and other structural supports for students of that age that have high needs. We're also applying for congressionally directed spending. It's the other CDS. So right now in my world, there's the CDS grants we're writing to request funding support, and then there's the CDS. Those are the littles that we're planning for that we will be fully responsible to provide for in FY28. So that was just the overview I wanted to share this evening. If you have any questions about the binder or other components of what the school committee is discussing, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for the superintendent? Yes, Counselor Jim.
Thank you, Chairman. The bringing kids back from remote special education, we heard last year that this was going to be a cost saving. Do you have a sense of how much money, even though the numbers have gone up, how much money has been saved if we had the same number of students tuitioned out last year or this year as we did last year? How much more would the budget be? I'd like to get some good news for a change.
Sure. Director Kraft shared this last meeting, and I think it was over 8. Was it 6.4 million? 6.2. It would be 6.2 million more this year and over 8 next year. Did I hear that right?
Well, that's good news, and I appreciate your efforts to do that. It's important financially, and it's important also that we not send them to Biddeford and other places and keep them as close to home as possible. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Mayor Chalene.
I just wanted to say thank you to admin for all the work you've already done on the budget. I know there's still meetings happening and still more work to do, but yeah, thank you all.
Yes, Member Harper.
Thank you. Just a clarifying question. I was wondering if members of council received the memo that you created that has details about the specific cuts that are being proposed of positions.
I didn't send it to them directly. It's been shared out publicly, but I don't know if they've had a chance to see it or not.
Okay. Sorry if I can respond to that. That feels like important information to cover, like the specific proposed positions.
Would you mind just sharing that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thanks.
And I'm happy to share this with you through City Administrator Canrath too. This 1 through 10 is what I had put from an excerpt perspective on the slides that I showed you. But we got into specific budget reductions, and the way we built this out, because there's no easy way to talk about people who have given of themselves to our kids and continue to do so day in and day out. We tried to break it down by grouping. So here at the top, you have 2 assistant principal positions, a human resources position, in addition to we no longer have a receptionist at the Dingley building. That started about a year and a half ago, and we had some sub pay in there. So what we would do is have someone that we might be familiar with that can come in and help during those busier times, onboarding, start of school year, those kinds of things. And so we've reduced that pool of money as well. Tech math, this is a math role that was working with our career and technical education students. This was about a $20,000 agreement. We're hopeful between the high school and the technical center, we can find room in someone's schedule to still offer this. The nice part of this is it offers that math credit that some students struggle with towards graduation, but are quite savvy in a technical sense. And so this math course was more catered to students in a technology or career and technical education field. We also have technology specialists and 4 technology coaches. These individuals are throughout our district and work in our schools, and they do everything from seeking out and supporting grants if they're acquired, showing staff and students how to use more modern technology with the devices and equipment we're able to secure. And that would diminish that capacity greatly. We did propose making 1 new position that would help try to at least maintain some effort around innovation and more modern use of technology in the classrooms. Coaches, so this is a proposal where we have instructional coaches. So these folks are highly skilled in their particular areas as it relates to teaching and learning and student management. And this reduces 1 literacy, 1 math, and 1 multilingual instructional coach. And this is an area where we don't want to lose people. Well, none of these areas really. We have a lot of staff that are new, that are working on their certifications, that are building their craft, and these folks are there to support that effort. With less coaches, we would likely split their time and do the best we can with what we are able to retain. The district clinical supervisor, so clinicians must have supervision as part of their licensure and oversight. We have 2 in the district. This would reduce 1 of them, and we would have to find a way to carry that load. We have 1 elementary school that has a dean of students. This proposal would reduce that dean of students who. Oh, sorry about that. The school-based family and attendance support staff. So we have, whether it's from grants or just different efforts around attendance and being family liaisons for different supports, we have different points of contact. So this title is a little longer than maybe needed, but some of these positions have different titles, but they do similar things where they're trying to liaison and help families problem solve the reasons why they cannot consistently attend school or be in a good space to learn. So this could be everything from, hey, we haven't seen you in 3 days, calling, seeing what you need, to attaching supports to folks that might be McKinney-Vento qualified, or have higher needs, like living in their car, no food, no water, no clothes, things of that nature. So these are some pretty dynamic people that know our families well. And we have seen an improvement in our attendance efforts since having these roles. Then it's the dean of students. role. Again, we have one at one of our elementary schools. The other four do not have this role. But we're looking at it from an overall lens. And so those two positions paired with the social emotional learning coaches in elementary schools, this would be an effort to restructure as a whole. And it would be putting a student support specialist, if you will, as a restructure, but to put one in each of the 5 elementary schools, it levels to an extent what each school has compared to the school nearby, while being thoughtful of their level of need. This won't be enough, but these are positions that are not in a classroom, student-facing, teaching and learning day to day. But they spend time with our kids and our families every single day.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. I actually have a question about that. And I've been trying to like figure it out since you've presented it to us and it's still not like fully making sense to me. So for this one, for the SEL coaches, it said 5, but 2 are locally funded. So that's 5 total. And so 3 are locally funded or 2 are locally funded. The other 3 are Title I funds or?
It actually varies by different grants, some title, some grant.
Okay. So you're proposing getting rid of all 5, the ones that are locally funded, plus the other ones that are.
Plus the other 3, plus the dean. So it's 9 positions being reduced and then put 1 in each. So it's.
So you're going to take 9 and then put 5 back.
Right.
Is that what is that how I'm?
Yeah.
So what's the plan with the SEL positions that are funded by other than local? Like what are those funds being used for?
So those will go away. And part of what we're putting together for the committee to come up soon is to talk about grant funds that exist and how those are sunsetting, including title funds. And so title funds I could talk about for a long time, but think of it in a federal sense that every salary is actually more expensive in a title fund than locally because of the requirements for the contributions federally. So every year when people, if you're in there as say an interventionist and you have, you're there for another year and you get your raise, it takes up more of that allotment. And so the problem we're having right now is the number of folks in title funds cannot be sustained. So pulling these folks out of those title funds or other grants will either sunset the position or create more space within the title funds to maintain the other intervention efforts. And we can't afford both.
Okay, so this may sound like a stupid question but we're going to take 7 physicians. Yes. Okay. 7 physicians. 4 are locally funded because the other 3 are in another form of funding, right? Technically.
So it'd be 6 locally, and then there are 3 that are mixed into grants and title.
Okay. And then you're going to put back 5 positions that are all locally funded.
Mm-hmm. That's the proposal anyway.
But we're taking away positions that aren't currently locally funded and swapping them with then being locally funded. So I guess, like, do you see a little like I'm kind of, I understand what the point of it is, but
We're giving back.
I don't know.
We're giving back
Like, what's
money
the
and
real
using real
savings?
money.
I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. The real savings is the funds that can be retained in title funds and grants that will allow for the positions that are in there that are not being discussed on this list to be held whole and to reduce the number of staff in the local budget. So it's not just cut and cut, it's also some restructure components. And again, it won't be enough for what our levels of need are.
Just to restate that part of it. So it's for this whole restructuring, it's going from 6 locally funded positions down to 5 locally funded positions. Thank you. Member Bowden, do you have a question about that?
I do, on the same lines. So it just sort of sounds to me like we are taking a title and we are calling it something different and we're having everybody in those positions reapply? Does that?
So any new position created in the budget, people have to apply for, yes.
Okay. I don't know. It doesn't sound like a big cost savings to me either. It just sort of sounds like we're taking a position and then we're calling it something else and telling everyone in those positions, sorry, you need to reapply for this position. What are the requirements? Is it still the same requirements? Is it you know, as far as, do you have to have a teaching certification to be qualified for this new position? And they'll end up basically on the same pay scale, on the same step. So we're really not saving any money.
I think there's a financial conversation, but there's also a job description conversation, and it's a much more dynamic job description that again, it's not going to be enough. It's an attempt to try to save some piece of support for families and students in that space. It does realign things though too, because if you look at this more closely, there's the where of these different positions, which again, we're building out a chart for you around that, but there's some misalignment in some of this restructure effort, or there was misalignment. We're trying to get it back to a place where there's more commonality between what resources each school has based on their level of need, but also one school shouldn't have 3 of these positions and another school have none. And that's part of this effort to create the 5 based on some reduction and realignment.
Yeah, Member Eames, follow up.
Is any of this related to the sunsetting of some grants? Is that part of this story? Because I'm still not quite following.
Yes, it is. Because so the 3 positions that are not locally funded are either in part or in full grant and or title. Yep. Okay. Duty aids, we don't have a lot in the district. There's 2 on here. One of them is vacant. This would just be a straight reduction. Resource room and self-contained classroom teachers. These are positions that are largely vacant. So this is where you get into your vacant spots. So there are 6 in the district. This would be a straight reduction. Ed techs, we have 2 right now that we believe that we can navigate the tasks. So that's a reduction of 2 ed techs. And the next one is librarians. This one, we're still exploring the different options with it. Again, I would say none of them are great. There are many districts that have ed techs as librarians or in that capacity, and a district librarian or a primary and secondary, which would be 2 librarians for the district, and then ed techs working in the library. We currently have ed techs at all of our elementary schools, and we have a librarian that helps with their oversight and that related work. The middle and high school currently have a librarian each. The high school also has an ed tech in existing budget. If we make this change, it would reduce the 2 librarians, but we'd have to add an ed tech at the middle school so that it's staffed. It would reduce the capacity at the high school, and then we would have to figure out if we can have 1 librarian to cover our district. Again, I don't love this plan. This is trying to find dollars. Or do we have a primary, secondary, and that's the part that we're still exploring as far as how we navigate that. Next, we have a literacy specialist. We're hearing from our administrative team that we need someone to help with coordinating the multi-tiered system of supports, which is written into statute. It's required. This is that intervention sequence that is organized building by building and resource by resource. And there's an effort and a want there to have more coordination. So to do that, this would be taking a literacy specialist out of the central office who works closely with the coaches and with curriculum and transitioning that position. Again, not necessarily savings, but it is a restructure that aligns to the sports that administration is saying they need. Let's see here, general education social worker. So we have some schools that have none. We have some schools that have multiple. And so this reduction is the attempt to spread resource amongst our elementary schools. And when we look at what other areas we can draw from, you can see that it's pretty tough.
I have a quick
Sure.
question for you about that. So to what you're just saying about needing to reapply for a new job, if it's the exact same job but at a different school, does that count as a new position that needs to be applied for?
So if it's a transfer situation, there's opportunities to transfer. I don't know that this will stay a general education social worker,
Oh.
depending on the other moves that happen.
Thank you. Are you finished with that part? Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Member Bowden.
Just a quick question on the librarian thing. So you're currently proposing that we remove the middle school and the high school librarian, but not the K-6 or pre-K to 6 librarian that floats?
So that's part of the exploring right now, because it's not clear to me if we can have one person do all of that, both our size, but also from a licensing statute perspective. It's not clear to me if we can just have one. If we could, we would, again, the committee would have to hash that out a little bit, but we would talk about what that would look like if we did have just one.
I'm just wondering, I mean, has there been a conversation with the current librarian that's pre-K to 6 about what could possibly happen? Because it doesn't look like they're on this list, but if we were to take that structure of keeping one librarian, then they would all have to reapply to become that one librarian that we hold on to. It wouldn't just default to the pre-K to 6 librarian that's not in this, correct?
Correct. If it's a job change, it would be a restructure that would have to be applied for. But right now, we're only trying to notify staff that at this point, we know are, in these documents for as far as potential reductions are concerned. We haven't extended beyond that, but as we explore it, it could lead to other conversations that need to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilor Chen.
Thank you. Superintendent Langley's, I'd be the last person in the world to say that teachers are overpaid, but I'm looking at a reduction of about 3% in the staff of the schools and a 6.5% salary increase or wage and salary increase. Those numbers don't seem consistent one with the other. Can you explain that?
So those salary changes are collective bargaining and negotiating contracts. That's where that number shift is. Between that and the healthcare, that's the change.
So were it not for the 30 members of staff that are being forced to look for new jobs, we would be looking at roughly a 7% increase in salaries and wages.
So I do have some other staff here that are saying it would be closer to 8. I think it was a 7.8 at one point when we looked at it, when we started making additional reductions.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Martel.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I have some questions. You're cutting, excuse me, one literary, one math, and one multilingual coach. It says, correct? How many of those are there in total?
Sue's counting. 11.
It's closer to 15.
Okay, so
Not counting the tech. 3 multilingual, there's currently 3 tech. There's literacy and math at each of the.
Do you mind speaking into the microphone?
So 14.
Could you
So
repeat that?
yeah, I just want to walk back through it. So I'd have to go look to have the exact number because they live in different parts of the budget because they're regular instruction and also multilingual, but she can pull up the actual and get it to us.
well, my question is just based on it. It seems like I don't know any of the teachers. I know a few. I'm sure all of them are excellent people that are friends with the students and do their very best. I also know that our taxpayers are good people with families, and it's just getting to a point where the money simply doesn't exist. No matter how much we would like to do all of the great things that we'd like to do, we don't have the tax base to support it. And I think it was a couple years ago, the budget got kicked back 4 times. I would prefer not to see that happen. That gets expensive on the city side to continue to do those referendums. I looked at where the cuts were, and it seems like there's a lot that interact directly with children. And I think that starting to cut some of the coaches is a good step, but if there's, I don't need the exact count, but if we're getting closer to 20, just for literacy, math, and multilingual, and how many others exist. And so I'm hoping that we're recruiting and hiring good teachers that are educated, and everyone needs to sharpen their skills and improve with their ability to teach the students. But when we've got so many coaches whose job is to work with teachers, not with students, I'm just wondering why we aren't focusing more on cutting the positions that don't work directly with students before we cut the ones that do. At some point, I don't, this has nothing to do with any of the teachers individually or who they are as a person, but if you just look at it like I am as line items, and I don't know any of these people, the numbers simply have to go down. And from a common sense point of view, for me, at least it seems you start, I think it's more feasible to hold adults with college degrees that are being paid salaries responsible for doing that task effectively and adequately, and holding them accountable for doing that in the classroom, and having to cut coaches of adults rather than teachers of students that are working with them firsthand. So if we do have dozens and dozens of coaches, my recommendation would be to try to cut deeper there and try to hold adults more accountable for their tasks rather than cutting positions that are directly interacting with our students. That's just an overall big picture thought, and I'm curious how many coaches there are and what percentage of the coaches that we're asking to be cut what percentage of coaches of the total coaches are we suggesting being cut currently?
Do you mind speaking to the microphone if you have that number now?
That's okay. And I work with these people all the time, but counting the heads is not something that I do every day. So there's roughly 26 of our coaches right now. Most of them sit in Title I funds. Some are, as Jake said, there's an SEL coach in Title IV, one in a Stronger Connections grant, or two in a Stronger Connections grant. So those positions are with sunsetting grant funds that Jake talked about. There's two local SEL positions at two of our elementary schools those are being cut. The 3 tech coaches are local positions that are being cut. And there's a multilingual teacher, a multilingual coach, a literacy coach, a math coach that are being cut as part of thinking about restructuring and using them across buildings, as Jake had mentioned.
Just to clarify, so as proposed, if all those positions were reduced, are there any coaching positions in the local budget remaining, or all of that remain would be in title or grants?
The remaining ones are entitled. The list that we have includes all of our local coaching positions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep, the 2 multilingual coaches, cutting 1 though.
There are 3 in local ones being.
Okay, there's 3 in local, 1's being cut. I counted those in the 26.
Okay, so there would be two multilingual remaining as a locally.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, hand over, member Eads.
Clarification. The word coach is being used in different ways, apparently. So the ones that were labeled coach in your memo are one thing, and then there's all these ed techs and other people and multilingual that are being called coaches here, but not in your memo. Is that correct?
So underneath the umbrella of coach, there's a number of different roles. The ones that are considered in the reductions are 5 SEL coaches. But but again, some of that lives locally, some of that lives elsewhere, but there's 5 positions there. Those are some of the ones that I talked about restructuring. There's also 3 specifically instructional coaches, math, literacy, and multilingual. And then the tech coaching positions, these are immersed in classrooms, helping teachers use the technology. There are 4 of those district-wide, 3 filled, 1 vacant. So there's underneath the umbrella of coach, there are a dozen reductions there. But again, looking at the other reductions of having that student services position is something that principals and staff are saying that they believe they need. So really, it's a wash of 7, but all instructional coaches.
Other questions or discussion? You had your hand up earlier. Oh, sorry, Counselor Montel.
Just with the restructure on the SEL coaches and the taking out 7 or 9, I believe it was, and putting back 5. What is without addressing like the in-school part, what's the net savings on that restructure from what it was going to cost to what was the savings picked up by restructuring that and eliminating, I think it ended up being 1 local position?
So I'd have to go pull line by line and look at the reduction. We actually have that in that memo at the bottom of the sheet, but I'd have to go pull them one at a time. And again, I'm happy to send that to you. But also, as far as what it would be, we don't know until we hire. But I can tell you the number as far as what's reduced.
So would it be essentially net 1 position less that we're paying regardless of what that salary would be? The amount of that salary would be the variant?
If we go from the 9 positions to 5, that's where you'd see the reduction. But again, not all of that lives in the local budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. So just a thought, unfortunately, schools are asking to do more and more that parents don't want to do or can't do. And because of that, we are then forced to hire more staff, provide more services, and do more than what we've ever been asked to do before. We heard from multiple admins come and say, like, you have kindergarten first graders who aren't even potty trained. So our kids are not coming to school ready to learn. They can't even perform basic functions sometimes. And so I think for me personally, what I would love to ask of the city is with people, we need those people. We have to have those people to run our schools and to teach our children. And so what we need help from you on is buying power. And how do we get that? Whether it's we're in an agreement, to my understanding, that we're purchasing power along with the city and benefits and workers' comp and those types of things. So how can you help us to lower our budget by negotiating those things? And also at some point, can we look at it and say, like, our agreement with you to buy power is not in our best interest. It may be in your best interest, but it's not in ours, because ours has gone up astronomically since we have ended our contract. And so I think for me, that's what I would like help with. Because you're right, you don't necessarily know the day-to-day. You don't sit here in the meetings. You don't get emails from staff and teachers and parents and the general community about the way that our schools are run. But you can help us with the things that are not people. So facilities, power, workman's comp, all of those things we would gladly take help with, I think. And I don't want to speak for the entire committee, but for me, myself, like looking at it, there's just so many things that you guys aren't aware and like privy to. And so, thankfully Jake and his team are. But I think any help along with those other things would be super helpful.
Oh, yep, there's one.
I do want to say we do sit together and have conversations about what things we might be able to do, and look to like the workers' comp piece and the power piece, and we are exploring both independent and mutually beneficial potentially, but we got to get some costing back on those. But we have been meeting and talking about some potential options, but some of these hurt this year, the workman's comp and the power especially.
Member Bowden and then Member Glenn.
Thank you. So every year I get more and more grouchy at budget season. When I look at our reduction lists and when it comes to how many checks and balances the school committee has compared to what you guys have as city councilors, right? Like you get to pick your budget, you get to pick what you're doing, and you don't have to put it out to referendum for the people to vote on. Not only do we have to put ours out to referendum, but we need to get your approval first, and then it goes to referendum. So there's a lot of checks and balances on the school committee side, and it's extremely frustrating for me because I guess what I want to ask, maybe it's the city administrator, what positions are you cutting in the city this year?
So I'll just say, so far in putting the budget together, we did cut $4.1 million from what was submitted to us. So that is a big start. As I said in my presentation last week to the council, if there's, interest and desire, we may have to go further. And I'll just tell you, we are preparing, I'm going on a menu of options for the council of additional reductions, should they want to take them. So we are prepared to offer those. But just do also know we've already cut $4.1 million from what was presented to us.
That's a good start.
Member Glant.
Yeah, tax base. We do not have a sufficient tax base to support our school, basically. What is being done to help Lewiston grow so that we have less nonprofits who are not contributing to the tax base and getting more and more businesses in the city so that we can support our school system? We are not Portland, but we have Portland's problems. We have almost Portland's census as far as students. I believe we probably even have more schools. I'm not sure, but we're pretty close. And yet we're being asked to support a budget that is not even near Portland. So, I mean, something has to give. Our students, we're getting more and more students in. Housing is being made. Housing is being brought in. People are building housing. That brings more families in. That brings more kids in. So this, as I said last week, this is not sustainable. I've been in positions and different things where, it's not sustainable. And I think we're going to get to that point soon where we're going to have so many students and no place to put them and no way to budget that won't support them. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Member Jensen and then Member Harper. You had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you guys all for being here tonight too. I know we both have some pretty hard budgets that we're working on this year. I just wanted to speak about a couple of things. One, just kind of, I guess, talk about the communication component. I talked about it at the last meeting that we had here. I think it's important to say to you guys too. I can also touch on the coaches a little bit too, to the end of that. Remind me if I forget though. It's been a day. So thinking about the communication, I think the communication to the public at large is going to be just as important as the work we do in this budget. There's very little wiggle room or preference work for us to do with this budget. So it's pretty much just finding what we can cut and hoping that the public can support it, at least for the school side here, and I'm sure for you guys too. So I guess going back in time, it's important to kind of remember, if I had to think of the theme of the last 15 years for the school department and the city side too, we're getting screwed by the state and the feds. It's just there's no nicer way to put that. But for the last 15 years since the recession, which I don't feel like we've ever fully recovered from in this city, we've been getting screwed by the state. It was around that time when every school district in the state had a shrinking student population, except for Brewer and Lewiston. And not only was Lewiston's growing, it was growing at an enormous rate. So all the additions that we paid for at Farwell, McMahon, Geiger, the middle school, the high school, tens of millions of dollars that the state should have paid us because we had more students. They should have given us money for schools. That's all in the property taxpayers here in Lewiston. We're still paying off that debt. It's tens of millions of dollars, maybe up to 100 million based off the debt we paid that the state screwed us out of over the last 15 years. And to think how far that could have gone over the last 15 years for us is incredible. So I think it's really important to think of the context. This is my sixth budget go around between school budgets and municipal budgets. First one was in 2017. And I can tell you at the time that there was a little bit of a wiggle room. We could kind of decide some things of what we want to do, some programming. That just doesn't exist anymore. It's just all cuts every single year. It seemed pretty desperate back then. It seemed like the trend was this is only going to get worse. Nothing down the line is in time to save us. There's no end in sight. And about 10 years later, I can tell you nothing's changed. It's only gotten worse. And I know there's some potential changes happening at the state level. I don't have any confidence that there'll be enough. Our taxes in Lewiston are high because we subsidize wealthy communities, particularly on the coast and the ski communities. They have low property taxes because of us. They create communities where people that are low income, needy, need services, you can't survive there. They don't pay much for their schools because they send all their kids to private schools. And so they push all their problems in the service center communities in this valley of Maine, particularly in Lewiston, and we essentially are forced to make up for it. So if there's one message I want to get across to the public, and I hope you guys can assist with it, it's that the Lewiston's budget, the city side and the school side, are high, property taxes are high, not because of any mismanagement by any of us. It's because we're getting screwed by the feds and the state, particularly the state. So as we go through this budget process, I think it's important for the public to kind of understand that and know that and realize that. And when we talk about cuts, we don't have any fat at the school district level. I can tell you working at McMahon last year, I mean, the idea of cutting any staff level is just, I mean, it's kind of horrendous. It's such a difficult position to be in. Thinking about the lack of choices that we have, it's extremely difficult. So again, when we work on the budget itself, I think it's important that we communicate with the public, with our constituents, what the reality is, and to make it very clear that this is not mismanagement by the district. This is Lewiston not getting its fair share. And I think that's extremely important if we're ever going to make some changes here as a city. We also don't seem to advocate well for ourselves. It could be helpful to maybe get like a joint resolution between our two bodies together. I know we often kind of sometimes harass the state legislators, but 4 representatives at a body of 151, without any support from us, they can't do anything. 1 senator out of 35, without support from us, they can't do anything. I mean, I know I've hearkened you guys a bit for a charter commission. I don't think this is a system of government that advocates well for itself. I think 10 years, if we don't make any big changes, we're still going to be in a pretty rough position here. But that's probably a conversation for another time. So again, the communication piece is really important. I guess to touch on the coaches too, I think there's a big misunderstanding. Now, when I was first in the school committee, I definitely had this misunderstanding, so I've been there. I'm not going to knock anyone for it. But teaching is much different than it was when we were in school, where you can kind of sit there, you behave, you may have a couple troublemakers in class, but the teaching kind of stand up, almost give like a lecture style lesson, and the kids do it. All right, you do your lesson, the kids are doing some math work, you may have a couple kids put their hand up. That's not what it's like anymore. You give the lesson, half the classes their hand up because they just, they're on screens most of the time. They don't have the attention span. A lot of time the parents will do everything for them, so these kids have no capacity to even attempt it. You ask them, what can I help with? And they don't even know what to ask for help with. And so having a coach come in for an important lesson, it can be extremely helpful. So if I'm looking at the math units, I'll look at particular lessons and realize this is a critical lesson for them understanding this. If I can nail this lesson, then it's going to make everything easier for the rest of the unit. And so this actually happened. I'd work with like the math coach, for example. Hey, can you come in this certain day? I'm giving this lesson. Great. One, having an extra body in the room for those moments where the students have their hands up and need help, because you can't get to every student at a time. Our math lessons take about 90 minutes to do properly. We have maybe 70, 75 for them. So the kids are getting less time than they actually need for the lesson. So that's just one example of using the coaches. I mean, my experience with the coaches never really coached me. They work with the students and they help me interact with the students better. But you can also think of like a student coming out of college to be a teacher. I mean, think of like a college quarterback going to any NFL team. You can't day one not have any training, not learn the system and jump right into it. So there's learning how to be a teacher, but every school district is different. And so unless you know the system itself in place, I mean, you're going to need a little bit of help, especially a lot of those newer teachers. So again, with coaching, I mean, there's a lot more to it than I think the public fully understands. There's also the aspect too, if you take out all the coaches, then they perform duties too. So that's just a bunch of extra staff members that are going to need to perform duties that we really don't have the staff members for now. And like I said, I think we're underfunded, currently. So again, the coaches, I think, might require a bigger conversation. I know some people in the public always go, oh, the coaches or administrators. But like for administrators too, anyone who's babysat kids can tell you you'd rather babysat like 3 very well-behaved kids than 2 very naughty kids. So a particular ratio doesn't really matter. We have tough student body in Lewiston. And so to me, I think we need more administrators. And so focusing on these arbitrary ratios and things like that don't always show the big picture. So it's complicated stuff. But again, I'm hoping that we can work well together, especially for the communication piece. Thank you for all that you do. And my line's open if you guys ever have any questions or any way I can help.
All right, thank you. And I would like to put a pin on the joint communication idea because I have a couple of thoughts on that. Maybe we can come back to you later, but Member Harper, you had your hand up.
Thank you. So I wanted to maybe just start by saying thank you, Jake, for going over all the proposed cuts. I know it's extremely painful to do. These aren't cuts you want to make, and they're real people. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that. And then I also just wanted to, this was touched on, but I just wanted to reiterate that we don't know yet the full picture of the sunsetting grant positions and what the reductions will be in addition to these 30 proposed cuts. There, for example, when we talk about, you know, state versus federal funding, there was a social worker. My understanding is that the middle school has 2 social workers, one for 7th grade and one for 8th grade. The middle school serves over 700 students. And these are, yeah, licensed clinical social workers who can deal with like the very, very difficult, like, you know, cases where students are dealing with abuse, neglect, like very intense things where, you know, they need kind of baseline support before they can learn. And the one of those social workers is under one of these sunsetting grants. So there was the name of the grant because I responded to ask for clarification what grant that was. And it's called an EASE grant. It's an acronym, and it was under the Federal Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And this was created in 2002. And it was a response, a direct response to the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And it was an attempt to increase school safety by increasing the mental health supports in schools. And so there were 9 districts in the state that were identified as having low, like, student to mental health support ratios. And Lewiston was one of those districts chosen. And so we have at least, like, I think there's at least 3. It's not completely clear how many additional like mental health support we have at the district under that particular grant, but it was a 5-year grant for $250,000. And there was an announcement last year that the feds will not be continuing this grant. So that is just one example that I'm aware of additional cuts that will be coming to the schools of positions. And I just know that when I talked to voters last fall, parents, grandparents, students that I spoke with were very concerned about school safety. And, you know, we have unfortunately rising gun violence in our community, and youth are connected to that. And I'm very concerned, and I don't know what opportunity there might be for, you know, the state or for federal or philanthropic sources to kind of backfill some of these really critical supports that we need in our schools. But I just wanted to raise that as part of this concern that we'll all be kind of sitting with.
Councilor Roy.
Thank you. One of the questions, and I'm sure you've already looked at this, nobody likes cuts to begin with. I mean, I really don't want to see cuts to the education programs at all. Have we looked at probably cuts in the Dingley building? I brought this up last year. This year, I sat here, I listened to the last school meeting. Somebody was talking, they said they had 4 or 5 assistants. Like, do we look at how many people have like supporting them? Because again, I mean, if you have a position and you're a director and you have 4 or 5 assistants, I mean, shouldn't we be looking at maybe cutting 1 or 2 of those instead of a position that is facing with the kids or interacting with the kids? So these are things that I am, you know, concerned with. I mean, I don't want anybody to lose a job. I really don't. But have we looked in the Dingley building to see if there are any cuts that we could be making?
I think assistant principals is what that may have referred to, but I'm not sure exactly. Did you have any thoughts to that?
We've definitely looked at reductions administratively, and there are a number of them on that list. And we'll continue to look at it.
Councilor Najin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few things that question to begin with. So there's 30 positions we're talking about cutting. 23 of them are currently filled. Is that correct? And how many of those, and how many positions are being basically reformulated as other positions? So how many of these potential 23 that are being cut can potentially be reabsorbed?
So as of right now, 6, maybe 7. I'm not sure on the librarian component yet. That could be recovered in another way.
Gotcha. So just from my perspective, and I understand we can throw Molotov cocktails at each other across the table here if we want to. There's certainly reason for frustration, right? I get it, 100%. For the past 2 years, the city council has not told the school committee to cut anything from their budgets. We've said we'll support the budget however we can when you bring it forward. It's true, we haven't raised the tax base, 100%. Not quite sure that that falls to city councilors, but it's where we're at. We're also dealing with a community that's 30 months out from the 10th deadliest mass shooting in US history, which if you look at the numbers, it cripples a communities economically for decades, for at least a decade. We're stuck in some really hard times right now, across the board. I would say when grant funding disappears, so does the position. That applies to everywhere in the city, unfortunately. If there's no money to pay from the tax base, then we need to remove the position that we're funding from other places. I would say that we could work together to advocate for more funding in order to cover for some of these needed positions that we can't pay for from the tax base. And at the end of the day, there are multitudes of issues within our community that we're struggling with. One of the problems that we're seeing right now, home health care offices that are existing in single family homes, which are driving up the price of single family homes for families that want to live in them while paying not great wages. And that's a challenge in our community. No new homes are being built. Yet it's easy to purchase a home in this community versus Brunswick because it's going to cost you a lot less money. So that's why we see so many home healthcare offices being run in our community. I think there's a challenge with all of this balance, but I would say from my perspective, what I'm seeing with the tax increase this year, just through the reeval, and now again, it's a redistribution of taxes and making it more fair across the board. But my position for the city side is I want to see a budget that doesn't go up $1. Now, as far as the school budget's concerned, it's not my place to say. And I'm only one of 7 people that I can guarantee you, many of the people up here will not agree to a $0 increase on the budget from last year because it does mean positions will get cut in the city. But right now, I know that I have neighbors who are going to be paying $1,500, $2,000 more in taxes without any more services whatsoever, period. And that's a fact. And so, I feel the struggle. I think it's important that we all communicate together as a group to the public to say, hey, these are the challenges that we're running into. This is what we need to have a functioning school system. And this is your portion of what you're paying, right? Because I think there's a lot of confusion about what comes from the state versus what actually comes from the tax base. And I have no problem carrying that message forward. And for my part, I would like to see no increase whatsoever on a dollar amount for the city budget. I don't know if that's going to make the school budget pass. I doubt it. Because at the end of the day, when people see their taxes increase and they can vote down your budget, they're going to. But yeah. And then, sorry, just really quickly, last Tuesday, Superintendent, you were talking about the way that we use LCIP funds in order to attach them to the regular budget without increasing the tax rate. And that's something that we do from our fund balance. Those are one-time expenses. And it has been seen in the past, not in this community, but it has been seen in the past that a municipality can use its city side fund balance to pay down a one-time
cost on the public school side. That has to be asked for. We don't know that that's needed. So I just want to point that out.
Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. I just wanted to share from the state revenue sharing side. So Lewiston is this year Lewiston schools are getting about 89 million in state funding. That's up 8.4 million or about 10.5% from last year. So it's around 70% of our school budget. Lewiston is again this year the highest receiver in the state. I realize it's never enough, but we're up over 10% from last year. Conversely, though, on the city side, the city's revenue sharing is down by about $1 million. And I've gotten together with Senator Rotundo and we're looking into why that is. It looks like our state valuation went up significantly this past year, which reduces the revenue sharing. But Lewiston, when I looked at the spreadsheet, Lewiston is the third largest loser of state revenue sharing in a dollars amount, not by percentage. So I'm looking into why that is on the city side, but just wanted to point out that around 70% of the school budget is covered by the state, and that's increased significantly this year.
That does raise one item. I was wondering if there might be room for some kind of joint school committee, city council messaging, which is around some of the state funding on the school side, at least I was considering. And in particular, related to the special education and in particular related to the particularly high need students that require the special purpose, at least currently require special purpose private school funding. This is something that we've talked about every year that I've been here and keeps getting more and more extreme, I would say, in terms of cost. Based on the numbers that the director shared last week, I believe just the tuition and associated costs for those schools make up about just under 10% of our entire budget. The entire school budget is for roughly 100 students who need to be outplaced. And stop me if I'm wrong, but that was at least the simple math that I saw. And what I'm worried about a little bit is the conversation around the state funding can, for example, they are discussing the formula used to allocate state funding currently. And this has come up for us before and just a couple weeks ago. And, you know, the conversation around special ed is, okay, maybe a percent changes here or there. Is that good for Lewiston? Is that good or bad? I think that may be entirely the wrong conversation to be having. And I'm worried it puts us in this position where, okay, can we, you know, work with our delegation to kind of advocate for more money, but then we already get the highest allocation of for state school funding and so on, where it seems to me, as again, the years have gone on, the costs have increased. It seems like the logic of funding, in particular, the services for those high need students, it just does not work at all to base that at all on local property taxes, at least with the regular education. And I want to also be clear as I'm saying this is not, I'm fully supportive of providing the services and having the students here. That's not in question for me. But the funding of it, at least with the regular education, the school committee and then ultimately the city council and the taxpayers and their votes, there's some say in what we do. And we're debating this now about, you know, this position or that position to cut. But there really, the choice for special education is, do we spend more on doing it ourselves or do we spend even more on paying a third-party private school to do it? There really is no say. It's prescribed in the services that are required through the whole process. The eligible schools are prescribed by the state and the tuition is set by the state. So I really don't understand what the city has at all to do with this process. If a student is of that level of need, we shouldn't be a part of it, frankly. They should get that service. But if the state is going to control it so tightly and the school committee really doesn't have a role, I think for good reason to ensure that they get the right service, then what are we doing here talking about it and paying for it directly? So, you know, there's a lot that could be said, I think, about state funding, but I'm thinking that might be a point where we could maybe come to a general agreement amongst both the council and the school committee on sending a message, not only to our current delegation, but if we're being honest, every elected office is up for election this year. So candidates for all those offices, I think, because it's not a sexy political issue, if we're being honest, right? This is not something that anybody is really paying attention to, is my impression. I also think it seems that Lewiston and some other service center communities feel the bite a little more, and so it's not necessarily on everyone's radar. So I wanted to put that out there as something that perhaps we could get together. Maybe it is a formal joint resolution, I think that could carry a little more weight over the next couple weeks or so to maybe put a little more message behind that this system is not really working for us. It's not going to fix our budget for FY27, but this trajectory is not working. It hasn't worked for the time that I've been on the committee, and I don't see how it will get better otherwise. So I wanted to put that out there. Councilor Roy, you had a hand up.
I'd get behind that 100%.
Thank you. Yes, Member Hawkins.
So I just want to share some of what I've learned over my time in Lewiston. Some of you know me from other jobs I've done in Lewiston. Some of those jobs, like currently I'm a school bus driver. At one point I ran the office for an in-home care group, and then I worked as an in-home care worker. Lewiston is kind of interesting because we do have a fairly large older population that does require care. And we also have one of the youngest neighborhoods in the entire state. So we're kind of caught on both ends with services that are required. I will tell you, when I ran the in-home care office, it was almost daily I tried not to cry because there were 500 available hours that people could be working to help our elderly neighbors. And there was no one to fill the positions. These were people that had been reviewed, seen doctors, all the paperwork was there to say they need this care. And we had no one to fill it. And now here on driving school bus, she's right. I drive pre-K kids and K through 12. And I will tell you, some of those pre-K kids, some of them are ready, some of them very definitely are not. And we do the best we can because that's all we can do. It's hard being in my position because I'm just the driver. I'm not their parent, I'm not their teacher, I'm just their driver. So I do what I can while they're with me. And some of them, yeah, maybe they're in first grade. Yeah, there's some things lacking. And I do what I can to help them catch up in a way that works. But that's why, and we talked about the middle school. I'm grateful every day I don't drive middle school. I don't have the patience for it. I remember what middle school is like for me. Nope, I'm good. I'm very, very good. But our kids, they're trying the best with what they have. And it breaks my heart how many ways we're failing them. And it's not intentional. I know that. We all want what's best for them. I know that. But in a lot of ways, our hands are tied. And you're very right about sending the kids out because I work with the people that drive them. And it's not an easy job. And I will say it gets harder every year. Because just like with teachers that need help with understanding the technology and implementing things fully and learning new ways of teaching, it's the same with our drivers. I'm glad for some of the things in the budgets as far as transportation goes, because it's desperately needed. And I'm looking forward to implementing some of it. But I'm glad to see so many people invested and thinking about these things, because a lot of people I know, the people that I know personally, they don't have the bandwidth to do what we're doing. They come home from work dead dog tired. They've been working 40, 50 plus hours. It's go home, get a meal, hug my kids, go to bed, and then rinse and repeat. And then pray that they can get everything done on Saturday because there's no time during the week. So I'm grateful you're all here. I'm grateful you're all listening. And I agree with what my fellow committee members have said, that, you know, we can advocate together because we all know where we're being failed and we all know where we're strong. Well, most of us know where we're strong, but we can work together. And I think Luke's very right. We need to make sure the public has the information to understand what's going on. There's so many people in this community that don't understand just how much funding we get from state and federal for our schools. They think it's all coming out of the city budget. So when they hear that the school budget is going up X and X amount or percentage points or the mill rate, they think that's all coming from the schools. And yeah, but also there's a lot that the city doesn't pay for because we're able to get some, not enough, but some help. And that's a communication gap. And if we could get more of our parents to understand what that gap is and how it actually works, they could get behind us when we go to Augusta and to our representatives and be like, hey, they're coming to you with facts. They know what they're talking about. Listen. I hate to say that the squeakiest wheel gets the, but it does. And when we've got our whole community squeaking, it's kind of hard to ignore us.
Yes, Councilor Long James.
Thank you. First, I would just like to say that I don't want to see any social workers removed from our schools. I think it's very, very important. Second, I don't know when we started allowing children to go to school that aren't potty trained. It seems like our standards have just continued to drop. Kids should not be going to school if they're not potty trained. Period. It's not a daycare. So I would like for staff and administration to really look into that and start putting that standard back. I mean, I had children that attended kindergarten here right at Longley, Head Start also, and they had to be potty trained in order to start. And I'm not saying there wasn't an accident here and there, but far too much time is being spent on things that the parents do need to do at home. And I understand what it's like to work really hard and have to come home and you're exhausted, but you can't leave it up to the teachers to care for your children and do the things that you need to be doing at home. So as much as staff needs to be doing their part, parents need to step it up a lot more than what they have. And I just think you need to look more into figuring out how you can put a stop to kids that are going to kindergarten that are requiring a lot more than they should from the staff. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Yes, Mayor Shalini.
Yes, Superintendent Lingless, Chairman McLaughlin. When does the school committee anticipate wrapping up the budget process?
Well, we do have 2 additional meetings next week, which I'm guessing we will need. I'll also say it is going to be a little challenging to know the exact timing without knowing exactly when we'll have the mill rate available for us. Now, maybe since we last met, that is now available. I'm not sure, but I'm just saying there's a couple pieces of information that we're waiting on. That the insurance rate is another big one that it's a little challenging to know. I'm not sure if we'll be voting before we have that information, I suppose, and we might just need to figure that out. But at least I would say we have 2 more meetings next week and then some additional meetings in the following weeks as needed. But certainly, of course, the city council has a timeline that we need to deliver the budget for. So, we'll be ahead of that. That's a long answer to your simple question, but just to say, maybe as soon as later next week, but it may be a couple more weeks. Did you have something to
Thank you very
add to
much.
that?
Yeah, in our schedule, we're scheduled for April 6th for budget if needed. And then on April 7th, that's when the budget presentation to City Council is scheduled.
Thank you. Did you have anything to add? Okay. Other hands? Okay, if you'll forgive me, there was one other potential kind of joint communications thing I wanted to bring up. So the superintendent mentioned that the school district is aiming to apply for congressionally directed spending requests. this relates to, how would you describe it? Basically remodeling the building, most likely, correct?
Yeah, it'd be an effort for rehab for 287 Main, but with a focus on a 678 model that's more hands-on specific.
So an application, I think, could be strengthened a lot if the school committee and the council were willing to support in writing that request. Now, I do want to note, it was brought up that this is something generally to discuss how we're going to handle the building going forward, and I don't think this would need to, shortcut that discussion at all. The one note is that the way these applications work is they opened a couple weeks ago. One is due later this week. The next one's due next week. And it's for a pretty game-changing amount of funds is the way these work. But you also don't really know if you're going to get it or not. So I guess the question maybe for the group to consider is if there would be some support in writing just a broad letter of support for this funding. Again, this is a little challenging in that we need it so quickly. I'm not sure there's time to do a formal resolution. So it might have to take the form more of a letter that we circulate and try to just keep it high level support that hopefully folks can get behind. And then, we'll need to have our more detailed discussions on the building and on the project itself later on, of course, as things develop for the committee. But any reactions to that or any comments? Yes, Councilor Longchips.
I would definitely stand behind that, and I hope the other counselors would also. We don't want 287 Main Street just sitting there, right? If there's funding available, yes, I get it. It's quite quickly that we need to act on it, but sometimes it's just like that. So I would definitely agree and hope other counselors will.
Yes, Member Bowden.
How much money are we talking about from this?
So the grants themselves, they have different criteria for each one. I have meetings this week with folks from each of the respective senators' offices, and so I'll know more detail, but it's in the tune of millions, as far as millions of dollars potentially. But again, it's a grant process. We've applied before, we've been considered, but we've yet to receive either of these particular grants.
And when did this grant like come on your radar? Just out of curiosity.
It was late last week.
After I said we should sell it.
But the CDS funding is funny sometimes because you don't know when it's going to open up and it's narrow. But yes,
Okay.
late last week.
Thank you.
Councilor Chen.
Thank you. I certainly concur with Councilor Longchamp. I would love to have more detail, as much detail as you have. I'm aware that these congressionally directed spending grants are extremely fleeting. They open up and then 2 weeks later they're closed. That's the way they operate. So the more information you can give us, the better suited we will be to draft a letter. If we can get a resolve within the time frame, so much the better, but at least to draft a letter that will speak intelligently to the need and the availability of funds. Thank you.
Member Hurd.
So I am very encouraged. You have said hands-on learning on more than one occasion, and so I would be interested to see what the district's plan is for something like that. I'm not going to continue down the road that I normally go on, but I think this could potentially be an opportunity for us as a district to try out some new curriculum and see where it gets us, because we heard from lots of admin, well, a few admin just last week about how engaged their students were and how less behaviors they had during blocks where their students were engaged in something that they were interested in, and it was more hands-on and it wasn't sitting behind a desk and asking them to sit still for 90 minutes for a period. So I think if we can try and do something along that line, I think you may have more support, and maybe that's just me, but I mean, if you're looking to do something more out of the box and one of the first maybe districts in our state to look at something like this, then I think that's Good. Thanks.
Any other comments on that topic or any other? Oh, yes, Councilwoman James.
So would it be possible for us to come up with a resolution? Is there enough time, or is that?
One of them is due Wednesday, so that may not give you enough time. The other one is due the following Friday.
Mayor Shalin?
One option could be that, administration, school committee draft a letter and then counselors individually sign on. So that could be a good option given the time constraints.
Would both school committee members and council members be amenable to that? So, not necessarily time to get things on the agenda, have a formal vote, but at least, draft a basic letter and sign on. Okay. Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, excellent. Anything else from you, Superintendent Lance? Any other questions or comments from the committee or the council? Okay, well, that was the extent of our agenda this evening, so we'll entertain a
Motion to adjourn.
to adjourn, okay?
So
Second.
moved.
Okay, so moved by member Bowden, seconded by member Hurd. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, any opposed?